Well, good morning, YouTube. Welcome back to the shop on this rainy Friday afternoon. It's just terrible out there, but good thing to have a roof overhead while we're working on today's project. And today we are working on the V Strom, the DL1000 that I picked up back in November. You guys followed along. I went to New York, picked it up from my friend Gary, who I've known since I was in 7th grade, and I rode it home. Now, the reason I got this DL was, well, because I wanted something to do a little bit more adventure touring on. And because I've known Gary for so long, I know the history of the motorcycle. I have done probably 90% of the services on this motorcycle since the day it was brand new in 2014. That was worth a lot to me, plus it gave me a really good deal on it. So today, I decided to go ahead and get the insurance put on it on my name and get the tag on it. And we're gonna go through the bike so that it's ready to start riding whenever we want to. Now we've actually got a ride scheduled for this Sunday because the weather looks like it's gonna be fantastic. And I think Mike wants to ride this instead of his Ducati. So I wanna make sure it's all ready for the road for him. Now I know it's already got AMSOIL in it. I did the oil change about 2.5 years ago on this while we were in Myrtle Beach, but it's due again. Also, tires. The tread's definitely worn down on them, but they're not at the wear bars. But if you look in the sidewall, there's definitely some dry rot and checking. Truth is, I probably should not have ridden this motorcycle back from New York with the tires in that bad of shape, but I took a chance and hoped that it worked out. So we know we're gonna change the oil. We know we're gonna put tires on it. Other than that, we're gonna give it a complete once over. We're gonna check the chain, check the adjustment, check everything else. The bike's filthy, but we're just gonna make sure that it's in tip-top condition. We might even bleed brakes and stuff like that just to get new fluid in there and start from scratch. Now the tires that are currently on here are Midas E07s, which, doing the research I've done, they seem like they're a very popular adventure tire. So they've still got some good highway use, but they're more of a 50-50. They're designed to give you what you need on the highway, but also give you everything that you need off-road without going to like a full dirt bike or enduro style tire. I ordered tires through Drag Specialties and they did not have this particular tire. So what I did is I went back to OEM. Now, I'm not gonna do 50-50 on-road, off-road most likely. I'm more looking at that 80-20. So I went with the Bridgestones. These are the OEM tire that came on it from the factory. You see it's still got some decent sized lugs on there. Should still provide decent off-road traction on gravel roads. Not going to work real well in the sand, but it's also going to give me a good highway ride and not be really loud and noisy, and it should make my feel better. And what I mean by that is, if you guys followed the trip home from New York, I mentioned how when you lean the bike over, you could feel these knobs lug, 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 lug as they kind of went. And I wasn't real comfortable with that, but it's probably just because I'm new to the ADV whole thing. But I think these are going to handle much better on the street, but still give me some off-road fun. And as you may have seen in that opening clip, when Zach was riding the bike into the shop, even with these aggressive tires on it, he almost laid it down in that little muddy sloppiness just outside of the shop. So that'll probably be worse with these tires, but I don't plan on riding through that type of stuff all that often. And you can see that even though it's been 2.5 years, that oil in there still looks nice and golden. It's not too bad. You can see that the chain is a little bit dirty, but not too bad. So we're gonna go ahead and clean that up. And luckily, he's got swing arm spools on there, so I can go ahead and use my pit stand, make the job nice and easy. So now I'm gonna go ahead and spray the chain down with some heavy duty degreaser. This Dawn stuff just happens to be what I've got here, make it easy. So after letting the degreaser soak on there for a little bit, I've got what's called a grunge brush, you see? It's made specifically for cleaning chains, sprockets, stuff like that. So just give this thing a scrub on all 4 sides, get rid of all that yucky. Now, what I'm about to do, I do not recommend that you do. This is just the way that I do it. It's very dangerous. In fact, it is exactly the way I lost the tip of my thumb about 10 years ago. So I'm gonna put the bike in gear, first gear, let the chain spin around, use the brush to clean it. The trick here is to stay clear from all the moving parts. Keep yourself in a position that if the chain or the sprocket grabs the brush and takes it out of your hand, it doesn't take your hand with it. Ask me how I know. Well, I already told you how I know. That way, you're letting the bike do all the scrubbing. It does make a little bit of a mess because it flings everything off, but we're going to wash the bike when we're done, so I don't really care. Now that looks much, much better. Now, a full confession, the way I normally would do this is I would take it outside the shop. Usually I can just roll this lift right out the door, do it outside the shop, and have a hose handy. That way when you're done cleaning it, you can just hose it down and it rinses everything off and it even cleans your lift off. I don't have a water supply here at this new shop, so that wasn't an option. So I just had a spray bottle with some mild soapy water in it that I used after the degreaser, just to kind of give it a rinse, and then use the air gun to blow it all off. And then I just use an old shop towel to clean up the lift afterwards so that we're not putting our elbows in water when we go take the wheel off. But the nice thing is now the chain is not nasty and greasy as we have to fumble with it to get the wheel off. And the bike is now sufficiently warmed up. We're going to go ahead and drain the oil. Now, one of the nice things about the V Strom is it is a single drain bolt for the engine. Unlike the Harley, most of the metric motorcycles, this one included, the engine and transmission are all in the same sump. They all use the same oil. All you need is one 17mm socket to pull the drain plug out of the bottom. Now, Gary has this aftermarket skid plate on here. And when he first came to me after having it on there and I did the first oil change, we realized that it didn't really line up with the drain plug all that well. So I actually made that hole bigger years ago so that it would fit. And I also cut a slot in it just underneath the oil filter. So you can see the oil filter down there. And I cut that slot in underneath so that when you crack the oil filter open, the oil can run down through that slot instead of hitting the skid plate, making a complete mess, and then running out the back. And of course, we're replacing it with another Amsoil filter, the EAOM 109 for Suzuki's. All right, with that drain plug still out, I'm going to let it continue draining. We're going to go ahead and pull the rear wheel off and get to that tire change. All right, rear caliper is only held on by 2 bolts, one with a 10mm head, the other with a 14. And then you can just slide the caliper up and off. All right, so normally you just slide it up and off. I had to fight with it a little bit, so I think maybe we've got a slightly sticky caliper. Pad's look in really good shape, so we'll clean that up when we put it back together. Then I just remove the axle nut on this side. All right, nut, washer, and adjuster block slide right out. And then a plastic hammer to drive the axle out the other side. It's like so. Now, I hold the wheel up as I pull it out the rest of the way, but I can set the camera down to do that. I'll pull the chain off of it. Set your left side spacer off to the side. Then the brake bracket over, and then the wheel slides right out. Now you'll notice I did not mess with the chain adjusters at all. I checked my chain beforehand and the chain was properly tensioned. We're probably going to leave it that way. We'll double check it when we get it back together. But you don't actually have to change the adjusters or move the adjusters when you're just doing a tire swap. All right, so we'll take this wheel over to the tire machine and get it swapped out, get a new tire put on it. Now, I typically set the wheel on the tire machine, rotor side down, sprocket side up, and then I remove the sprocket on the metrics. It's pretty easy. Just pick it up and pull it out. And then you should have your rubber cush drives left in there. And just set this aside. That way it doesn't fall out while you're working. And check these. If they're loose, take them out too. But yep, see that one's kind of loose. Yeah, we'll just take them all out. All right, since I had the wheel off the bike, I did as good of a job as I could at cleaning that wheel up, as well as the sprocket, and all the isolator bushings are now clean as well. So now I'm going to go ahead and clean up the rear brake caliper and some of the stuff here on the inside of the swing arm that you just can't get to when the wheel is on. I'm trying not to make it perfect. I'll probably go blast this thing with a pressure washer, but there's that fine detail stuff that this is the time to clean it. Wow, absolutely beautiful sunset this evening. Grabbing some Milo Lube to lube up the axle and fitting pieces as I slide everything back together. So I have cleaned the brake caliper bracket, the axle, the spacers, basically cleaned everything, get all the old gunky stuff off of there, but still want to put a light coat of lubricant on there. And it's not that the axle itself needs lubricant, we're really protecting it from rusting. So just a thin coat on there. It does help it slide in and out of the wheel a little bit easier, but the bearings are all sealed bearings, so they don't need any lubricant in here per se. It's just weather protection. All right, so now upon reassembly, what I do is I get the wheel almost into position. I'm gonna slide it in a little bit further. I'm gonna go ahead and get the chain put back on the sprocket. And then with all the spacers in the wheel, I will start the axle through the right side of the swing arm and into the brake caliper bracket. And then I will come over here holding this spacer with my thumb, raise the wheel up into position, and hold it with one hand, then reach through with my other hand, slide the axle through. All right, so see, chain is on. Spacers are in place. I've got the axle just hanging out there. Literally done this 1,000 times. The one time I try to put it on camera, it fights me. All right, the axle is coming through. Now you can make sure the adjuster block over here is seated on the axle properly and into the swing arm. And then drive it the rest of the way home. All right, then come over here, put your spacer on, pull the wheel back, drops right in place, your washer on, your nut. I whack the back tire a couple times, make sure it's up and seated, and that's it. It's all back together. Pretty simple, eh? All right, with the back end all put back together and that beautiful tire on there, brakes reassembled. I went ahead and lubricated all the little shafts on the brakes as well. I can see where it was binding a little bit on here, so hopefully cleaning that up will work. Pumped up the brake. Now we're back to filling the oil. And, and I don't always remember the exact capacity on some of these metric bikes, but the nice thing is this one, it's printed right on the side of the case. 2,700 milliliters. Plus with the window there, all you can do is watch it as you're filling it and stop when it's full. All right, with that done, I think I'm gonna flip this thing around on the lift so I can do the front tire. I don't have to. A lot of people would just leave the bike up here, put a jack underneath it. I actually prefer to take it off, flip it around, back it into the lift, then I get the whole front area to work with and nothing is in the way. So it's really simple to do. And in the long run, I think it makes it a whole lot easier. So that's what we're gonna do. right, so as you can see, it was pretty simple to just flip the thing around. And I didn't have to worry about jacks. I didn't have to worry about extra straps. And everything here at the front tire is unobstructed. I don't have the wheel chalk or any of that stuff in the way. Makes it nice and easy. Now, radial brake calipers on this. So there are 2 bolts. They have a 12mm head on each brake caliper. Those will slide out of the way, and then we'll work on the axle. All right, after knocking the axle nut loose, and then there are 4 10mm pinch bolts, 2 on this fork leg, 2 on this fork leg, and that's all that actually secures the axle in there. I've got another paddock stand I can use for the front. This is why flipping it around makes it easy. Just like that, wheels up, plastic hammer, knock the axle out. And once again, hold the wheel, slide the axle out, wheel is removed. Mind your spacers, make sure you take it out, put it on the same side of the bike it's supposed to be in. Now, off to the tire machine to swap this one out too. Now when you're doing a rear wheel, it's pretty easy to keep your direction in check. Sprocket on one side or a belt, in Harley Davidson's case, brake on the other side. But on a front wheel it can be tricky. Luckily with Suzuki, they always put an arrow on their wheel. So right now, this wheel is sitting in a clockwise rotation. Now I'm twisting the tire around to get my yellow balance dot lined up with the valve stem. Always double check your bead line. It's good. And it looks good. Right, you'll notice I didn't balance the rear wheel because I'm using the ride-on. It's a sealant and a balancing agent all at the same time. Which means I shouldn't need these wheel weights that are on here. Scrape those off. Just put more on this side. All right, let's go clean this wheel and get it put back on. All right, guys, all back together, and I think it's ready for the road. I did look at the brake fluids, and they actually look pretty good. It's probably a good idea to still change them, but I'm running out of time tonight, and I'm running out of battery on the camera phone. So I think we're gonna call this one quits for now. I've still got tomorrow where I can come over here and do a few more things on this, and I'd like to give it a good bath before we go for the ride. And then hopefully on Sunday, you guys will get to see a ride video. But at this point, I want to thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Until the next time I see you, keep those engines running. You know, new tires, it's kind of like having a new pair of shoes. It totally changes the look of the motorcycle. Nice and clean.